right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Friday, everybody. Today's January 17th, 2024. And today's top story is the very believable, very legitimate, totally real world, grounded in reality. Welcome to planet Earth. GDP growth numbers out of China. They are fantastic. Number one GDP growth, 5.4% GDP growth in China. It's an economic miracle, folks, despite slumping consumer sales that are so bad that the Chinese government is going to helicopter people money so that they can buy smartphones. Despite the fact that the property market is in total collapse and has been doing so for, 3 years now? We've been talking about this. I just put out a video yesterday about Banca, the latest state-backed real estate developer to utterly collapse in China. They're missing out on their bond payments. And the CEO just got quietly disappeared by police. Despite all of that mayhem in China, massive 5.4% economic growth. And that seems like a totally legitimate, realistic, believable number to me. Really. And coincidentally, I'm in the bridge market. So if any of you guys are interested in buying the Melon Bridge, feel free to reach out to me by email. I've got a special rate going on bridges in celebration of these magnificent economic growth numbers from the National Bureau of Statistics at China. But wait, there's more, even better data coming from the National Bureau of Statistics. The rate of population collapse in China is slowing. They reported their GDP numbers yesterday. They also reported their population numbers, the third consecutive year of population decline in China. No big surprise there. China's birth rate has been in utter collapse, as have other places in the world, I should point out. But very distinctly, all of a sudden, magic, there was a surge of almost 500,000 babies being born in China last year, 500,000 more than the year before. How? Nobody really knows, because during economic calamity and when people lose most of their net worth, which is tied up in a house that was never built, the last thing they're doing is like, hey, let's have a baby to celebrate. But apparently that's what's going on in China as well. The population fell by just 1.39 million, a smaller decline than last year. So, I'm sure these have nothing to do with the fact that there's totalitarian state control in China and that the numbers are totally made up. Look, we do it too. We fudge our numbers. Have you guys seen the downward revisions to the unemployment or to the jobs numbers for all of 2024, or pretty much the whole year? So, look, all these government numbers, I tend to be a little bit skeptical of pretty much anything coming from any government. It's just how I roll. Do we need to put this thing on? I think that when we're talking about Chinese government statistics, I think this goes without saying. But that being said, guys, this is laughable. Like, this is just the stuff of comedy, what China is claiming here. And they're shooting themselves in the foot. This data is too important. Economic data produced by national statistics institutions like our BLS or our Census Bureau or the National Bureau of Economic Research, too much rides on that data. You have to trust it. It's got to be accurate. If you trust the data, you can make accurate economic projections and you can make smart business decisions based on the data. But when political influence corrupts the data, now business owners and planners have to try to work around things they can't see, and they make inefficient decisions, and it slows everything down. So the more you do this, the more you mess with your economic data, the more you have to mess with it in the future, because it makes things even worse. Chinese are going to learn that lesson the hard way. Totally laughable numbers coming out of China yesterday, late last night. Coincidentally, we had some really bad performance from Apple yesterday. Apple had its worst day since August. It lost 4% on a report from Canalys that the iPhone is now the number 3 smartphone in China, losing its spot as number 1, falling 2 places to number 3. Some of the data that we got from Canalys says that iPhone sales were down 17% year over year for Apple. And keep in mind, guys, Apple had an amazing year in 2024. Apple stock was up like 25%, all totally driven on the hype around the iPhone 16 and Apple Intelligence. Well, how's that working out for you guys? It's almost like there was never really any substance behind this AI bubble, but who am I? What would I know? I wouldn't know anything about that. Also going on this morning, we've had a major breakthrough. It's been building pretty much all week It seems like the Israelis and Hamas have reached an agreement, a tentative agreement. Everybody, quick, find some wood to knock on for crying out loud. It goes into effect on Sunday. It looks like that war will be at least paused, which is a good thing, a big step in the right direction. There's a couple of articles out this morning talking about shipping in the Red Sea. It looks like the Houthis are going to go along with that deal, but some of the international carriers are a little skeptical. They're not going to start moving their container ships en masse right away. Also, those carriers are enjoying much higher rates since they've had to start sailing around Africa, so I'm sure they don't want those higher numbers to go away either. But at the very least, that is a step in the right direction, back from the brink, if you will. We got some interesting data from Redfin this morning. Pending home sales for the month of December, down 4.5%. That is the biggest decline since 2022. Those higher interest rates are starting to take a bigger bite out of the real estate market, but the prices, they still won't move. The sales are frozen solid, actually falling. They're freezing further, I guess is how you would put it, but the prices just won't move. Another interesting data point from this Redfin report, 40,000 contracts were canceled in the month of December. That is 16.2% of all contracts for home sales were just outright canceled. People got up and walked away from the table. That is the highest cancellation rate since 2017, which kind of made me wonder what happened in 2017 that everybody canceled so many contracts, but that's beside the point. The housing market is still in trouble here. We got a battery storage plant in California is on fire, the Moss Power Plant, which is, you hear a lot about renewable power. And look, people got upset because I said some mean things about renewables yesterday. Sorry, cry me a river and build a hydroelectric plant to generate electricity off of your tears. And then maybe I won't have so much to say about renewables. But electric storage, battery storage has been touted as a way to solve the intermittency problem. Well, this fire at the Moss plant in California just draws a point that, like, nothing is perfect, guys. There is no power source that doesn't have some massive drawback. In the case of batteries, when they catch fire, you can't put them out, like, ever. Class D fires are ridiculously difficult to put out. It's basically burning metal, and the fire creates its own oxygen as it burns, which means all the fire company can do is surround it, put tape around it, not let people near it, and just sit there and wait for the thing to burn itself out. They've ordered evacuations. This is more evacuations in California, but totally unrelated to the wildfire. That's worth pointing out. This has nothing to do with the fires. This one just started. Not sure what started this one, but it's not in the area of the wildfires burning. We got a story out of Turkey. Turkey is buying liquefied natural gas after there was a problem developing with an undersea pipeline from Azerbaijan. Now, I haven't heard anything specific about this pipeline. This was news to me, and it was kind of like buried in this story that Mish found about Turkey importing more LNG. But I couldn't help but notice a problem with a subsea pipeline. Guys, is this another one of these attacks, another sabotage of energy infrastructure? We've seen pipelines all over the Baltic, cables all over the Baltic get cut by ships dragging anchors. We saw something similar in Taiwan a few weeks ago. The Chinese were dragging anchors, cutting cables. We had the Nord Stream pipeline was blown up by somebody, probably us. And now we've got a natural gas pipeline that sends gas from Azerbaijan to Turkey, along with Georgia and Europe, and that's not working. What is going on? Is this another case of sabotage of energy infrastructure? In which case, will you stop it? Like presidents, politicians, just like pull out a tape measure and have your contest over in the corner where nobody's looking, or arm wrestle, whatever. Just stop blowing up our power and making it more expensive. Would you mind, please? Everything else is already expensive enough. Thanks. Thanks for nothing. And last but not least, another space story from yesterday. SpaceX, although not as good as the Blue Origin story, unfortunately, SpaceX put on a light show yesterday when their spaceship blew up shortly after launch. It looks like there was a fire shortly after separation from the booster. The spaceship blew up and then burned up on re-entry. It looked like something out of a Michael Bay movie, to be honest with you. It was a pretty cool light show, but a sad story, a setback. Elon is out with a tweet. He thinks they know what caused it. The silver lining to this story, though, is that SpaceX was able to catch that reusable booster. It landed back on the tower that it launched from, which is a pretty impressive feat. So it wasn't a total loss. I like space, so sue me. We got a lot to talk about this morning, guys. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in the markets this morning. Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button so you can come have your coffee with the Melonheads every morning as we go through markets. And we got more green this morning. The S&P is up 53 points or 0.89% to the upside. The Dow, meanwhile, up 284 points, 0.2% higher for the Dow. Good morning for stocks, it seems. The NASDAQ leading the way higher. Look at the NASDAQ up and to the right here, 1.74% higher, 366 points in the green. Stocks are loving something today. Probably the ceasefire talk in Israel. Maybe that's some optimism driving stocks higher. I don't know why that would affect the NASDAQ in particular. But we've got a stronger dollar as well, 33 basis points higher at 109.27 for the Dixie. Looking over at the bond market, we've got mostly red here. The 30-year Treasury, 4.810. That's down 3.5 basis points. The 10-year's at 4.586, down 2 basis points. 10-year back below 4.6. That's interesting developments there. The 2-year, 4.234, down 0.5 point. And the 1 month is at 4.313. That's actually up 1 basis point this morning. Important thing to keep an eye on here, guys, just looking at the 10-year chart. This is daily candles going back to about last spring. Here was the start of the Fed's rate cut cycle down here. Yields went up, had a little bit of a bounce. Now, I want to draw your attention to the month of December, which starts pretty much here and ends here. All right. Rates went straight up in December. They continued up for about the first half of January. Now, for the last 3 days, we've seen a pretty substantial correction down here. 3 consecutive days of lower yields on the 10-year. So let's erase all my squiggles. Are we looking at another one of these? Just a little, we'll call it a bull flag consolidation before we rip higher, because you can kind of see a similar pattern forming there. Or is this a reversal, kind of like we saw back in April of 24, that's going to take us down for several months? I don't know, but keep in mind, this is very important, guys. This is going to affect stocks. This is certainly going to affect the housing market, and it is going to affect inflation expectations. So keep an eye on this development. Those 3 days in a row of significant drops in the 10-year kind of caught my eye this morning. Looking over at the commodities board, we've got spot gold still above $2,700, although it's down a couple of bucks today, $2,706. That's down almost $8. We're about 0.25% lower. Spot silver is also down this morning, but still above $30, $30.25 for my favorite of the shinies. That's down 55 cents or about 1.8%. We've got copper down 2% this morning. Platinum is up 0.75%. Palladium is up by 0.25%. And West Texas Intermediate crude oil is at 77.51 for March futures. That's down about 33 cents or 0.4% lower. Looking over at Bitcoin, we're having a good morning in the Bitcoin market here, as shown on Coinbase, $102,546. That's up about another $2,000 from yesterday, back above 100,000. Just want to zoom in a little bit here, looking at these daily candles, guys. We recaptured the 50-day moving average. We came down, retested, and we bounced off. That is a very encouraging technical signal. We're also about to take out this prior little high from about 2 weeks ago. Watch this level of around 106 to 108, guys. If we break above that this weekend, then I think we're going to 120 in a hurry. Keep an eye on those two levels as we move here. All right, now let's talk a little bit about this one in Wall Street Journal. The barrage of stimulus powers robust Chinese growth, along with some skepticism. Put me down for some of that skepticism. I'm a little less in camp robust growth. I'm a little bit more in some skepticism. Beijing says its economy expanded by 5% last year, but a variety of weak signals have made some outside economists dubious. I am a dubious outside amateur economist, if you will. And you notice that the byline here says Beijing says its economy expanded by 5%. Even Wall Street Journal is subtly poking fun at what Beijing is claiming here. They're not saying China's economy expanded. They're saying Beijing says. China said its economy expanded by 5% last year, formally hitting its official growth target in a difficult year that saw officials respond to a sharp summertime deterioration in key indicators with its most aggressive stimulus in years. The country's National Bureau of Statistics said gross domestic product was buoyed by solid growth in investment and exports, which offset weaker consumption, highlighting the unevenness of Chinese growth. Still, some outside economists say the robust headline numbers contrast with a variety of other data points that paint a weaker picture of economic health, including anemic consumer inflation, tax revenue, and online spending, the economy remains mired in a real estate slump and has been struggling with deflation. And you don't typically get 5.4% economic growth when you have deflation. No, sir, you do not. Look, guys, the one thing I would say about this, there is one possible explanation here that maybe might take the GDP numbers positive. I still don't think it gets you to 5%, but there's two things. It's possible that the stimulus that started late summer caused a big rally in Chinese stocks. It's possible some of that stimulus spurred a little bit of economic activity and a little bit of growth, but most of that stimulus was really hot air. A lot of that money hasn't actually been deployed yet, so it was really, a lot of it was just a head fake from the Chinese government. The other possibility, though, is with the Trump win, that there's been a lot of demand pulled forward from Chinese exporters. It's possible a lot of people around the world are stocking up on inventory in order to get ahead of the anticipated Trump tariffs, and that's leading to a very short-lived spike in exports from China. Those are feasible, plausible explanations for some of this growth. I still don't think that gets you anywhere near 5%, but it's worth pointing those factors out. That could be playing a role here. Or, this could just be another in a long line of just totally ridiculous things said by communist rulers. I mean, it's the 2020s. Let's not rule it out. Now, also going on this morning, another very dubious claim. China's population shrinks for the third year, even with more babies born. Decline comes despite more babies born in the year of the dragon, and the shrinking workforce risks putting a strain on long-term growth. China's population shrank for the third straight year in 2024, even though births rose slightly, underscoring a persistent long-term risk for the economy. And that's putting it mildly. China has a big-time population problem. The total number of people in China fell by over 1.39 million to 1.408 billion last year, according to data released by the National Statistics Bureau on Friday. Around 9.54 million babies were born, which is 520,000 more than the year before. The bump might partly be due to the belief that the year of the dragon in the Chinese zodiac is lucky for having children. Even so, it was the second lowest number of births since the founding of the People's Republic of China in 1949. Guys, when the economy is going to hell in a handbasket, reproduction is the last thing on people's minds. It's just hard to have kids when you're losing your job and all your net worth is tied up in your house and it's going down in value. Now, this chart kind of shows the population situation. These are yearly bars. The black bars is the number of births. The pink bars, the number of deaths, and then the yellow line is the change in total population. Now, you can see here, guys, the deaths have been rising even as the births have been falling. And for the last few years, we've had more deaths than we've had births. That is a sign of an aging population. That's a problem that's going to keep getting worse. And of course, you see that the change in population has been negative for 3 years now. That's going to continue for a long time, guys. And look, this is partially to blame for the problem with the Chinese real estate market, or maybe not to blame. I mean, that was a speculative asset bubble, but this is going to severely complicate recovery from the collapse of the Chinese real estate market, because when you've got fewer people, by definition, you've got less demand for buildings, and China already has way too much building supply. And if demand's going down, what does that mean? It means price is going to keep going down. So this is a major headwind for recovery from that Chinese property crisis that is still getting worse. Case in point, check out that video I did last night about China Vanka. There's another developer going bankrupt. They're probably not going to be able to pay their $4.9 billion of debt that's coming due this year. And they just disappeared their CEO. That's never a good sign, right? It's like, let's put that up there with a change in the CEO or accounting irregularities. When your CEO mysteriously disappears or is taken away by police, probably not a good thing, all right? That's not a dip you want to buy, in my opinion. Now, guys, it's also worth pointing out that this problem with the population in China, this is not unique to China, all right? Let's be fair to the Chinese, all right? Let's placate the Chinese trolls who are adorable, but I'm sure they're going to be all over me in the comments today. This is also a big problem in Europe. Check this one out that Mish found this morning from the Spectator Index on Twitter. 358 villages and towns in Italy did not record a single birth in 2023, according to the country's National Statistics Institute, as birth rates continue to fall. 358 towns without a baby born. All right. I mean, this is a dystopian sci-fi movie at this point, the population collapse that's going on. And look, when the world leaders in the West and the East, I mean, they've done it. They do it in China. They do it in Europe. They do it here. When you treat human beings like cattle and you play games with us and you're constantly extracting more and more from us while at the same time suppressing wages, we can't afford to have kids. And, well, you end up with stuff like this. And that is not good for your business interests. You, they, the ruling elites of the world, knock it off so we can start having kids again. There, I said it. Anyways, everybody drink up this weekend and have a good time because the world depends on it. We need to start making babies again. So I don't know, let's all make bad decisions together. Why not? Also related to that China news, Apple has the worst day since August following reports of China and AI struggles. This one took a big chunk out of Apple yesterday. Apple stock closed down 4% on Thursday, its worst day since August 5th, following several reports of lackluster iPhone sales in China. We talked about one earlier this week from a different firm, but then there was another report came out yesterday. The iPhone maker's stock price is down nearly 12% from its most recent peak in December, and it's the worst performing of the 7 largest tech stocks so far in 2025. The slide comes after a report Thursday from Canalys, a market research firm, which suggested that Apple had fallen to 3rd place in terms of smartphones sold in China in 2024, behind homegrown manufacturers Vivo and Huawei. Apple shipped 15% of the 284 million phones sold in China last year, according to the report. But that was down 17% on an annual basis. Vivo and Huawei, meanwhile, saw strong growth. And again, guys, Apple stock had a rip in 2024, and their best-selling product is declining rapidly, double digits in their second biggest market. Kind of makes you wonder what, if anything, is behind this move in the stock. You can see Apple had a rough day yesterday, down 4.04%. It's clawing some of that back this morning, up $3.24 or 1.4% higher. But again, if you look at a one-year chart, Apple is still up 22.7% from a year ago, even after that 4% fall yesterday, on declining sales, on falling earnings. It's all just multiple expansion. This bubble has a date with reality soon. Also, guys, we talked about what was going on in Israel and Gaza and how there is optimism about a deal. It has been reached. It goes into effect on Sunday. Hostages will be exchanged. The shooting will stop, God willing. Also worth pointing out here, Houthis signal a pause in Red Sea ship attacks after the Gaza truce. I'm not going to read too much into this one because the headline says it all. The missiles are supposed to stop flying. The drones are supposed to stop flying at the commercial shipping in the Red Sea as a result of this deal. That being said, we got this one in Bloomberg this morning. Shipping giant Maersk cautious about a quick return to the Red Sea. So they're a little skeptical here. They want to see, maybe a couple of days or weeks without a missile flying before they send their boats into harm's way. And in the meantime, Maersk will continue collecting those elevated rates. So might as well. They're incentivized to take their time here. But at the very least, some optimism in the Middle East. Why not? All right. It's nothing, no problem with a little good news every now and then. Now, let's get back to our regularly scheduled doom and gloom. Pending home sales fell the most since 2022 in December as mortgage rates jumped. Redfin reports roughly 40,000 home purchases were called off in December, equal to 16% of homes that went under contract, the highest December percentage on record. Pending home sales fell 4.5% month over month in December on a seasonally adjusted basis. That's the largest decline since October of 2022 and declined 2.3% year over year. Now, that October of 2022, that is shortly after the Fed started their taper. Do you guys remember the taper tantrum? The Fed had been doing QE for all of 2020 and 2021, and then they started to taper their QE. They started to print less money, and then by March of 2023, they started quantitative tightening. That was the Fed's pivot, and then they started raising rates shortly after that. So this data, the decline in home sales, is the worst since the Fed started to turn off the valve of easy money. That's according to a report from Redfin, the technology-powered real estate brokerages. Home buyer demand dipped at the end of the year because mortgage rates jumped. After inching downward at the beginning of the month, mortgage rates reversed course halfway through December and have been rising since, in part because the Federal Reserve projected fewer 2025 interest rate cuts than anticipated. The weekly 30-year fixed-rate mortgage now sits at 7.04%, the highest level since May, after hitting an early December low of 6.6. Home purchases fell through at the highest December rate on record, which likely contributed to the decline in pending sales. Nearly 40,000 home purchase agreements were canceled in December, equal to 16.2% of homes that went under contract that month. That's the highest December percentage in records dating back to 2017 and is up from 15.1% a year earlier. Home buying activity will likely slow further in January due to the wildfires impact in Los Angeles, the nation's second most populous metro area, and winter storms impacting the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast, said Redfin senior economist Elijah De La Campa. Rent prices, on the other hand, may tick up as people who have been displaced by the fires seek alternative housing. So we could see more stress in the rental market, higher rents, which, by the way, owner's equivalent rent is a big input to the CPI. So this could potentially drive inflation. Even though we're seeing fewer homes sold, you'd think that would lead to lower prices, but those people are now crowding out the rental market, driving rents higher. Could this actually send inflation up? It'll take a few months for that to reach the data, but that's worth keeping an eye on. Residents are ordered to evacuate after a fire breaks out at a power plant in Central California. This one in CNN this morning. People living near a power plant in Central California were ordered to evacuate their homes Thursday night after a fire broke out at the facility. Fire crews were battling the blaze at the Moss Landing power plant, which serves as a battery storage site, a spokesman for Monterey County Sheriff's Office told CNN. The incident is not connected to the wildfires in the Los Angeles area, and efforts to contain the blaze are ongoing, the spokesperson confirmed. The fire erupted at the facility at around 3 p.m., and evacuation orders were issued around 6:30 p.m. due to concerns over hazardous materials and potential chemical releases, the sheriff's office spokesman said, without detailing the materials that were causing the concern. More than 2,000 people were told to evacuate. Santa Cruz County public health officials advised residents to stay indoors, keep windows and doors closed, turn off ventilation systems, and limit outdoor exposure. Santa Cruz is north of Monterey. Now, guys, when these metals in these batteries start burning, there's almost nothing you can do. If it's a small battery, maybe you can drown it out, but pretty much no, because these fires make their own oxygen. And so all the firefighters can do is just sit there and keep anybody from wandering too close to the fire and just wait for all of the material to burn itself out. That's all you can do. It's really nothing else. No amount of water will put out that fire. Turkey turns to LNG as Azerbaijan's piped gas flows decline. This one was in Bloomberg. Now, it's not so much the fact that Turkey is importing the LNG. That is going to put some upward pressure on LNG prices. That might be good for names like Cheniere here in the States. But the fact is, piped gas flows decline. What is going on with the pipelines here? That's what caught my attention. Turkey has turned to liquefied natural gas imports to help meet peak winter demand as regional pipeline flows decline. The nation's state-run gas importer Botas has purchased 7 LNG shipments for delivery from the end of January through March in a tender this week and is seeking another cargo for February, according to traders with knowledge of the matter. Is he related to a person with knowledge of the matter? Same family, maybe? The purchases are driven in part by a reduction in piped supplies from Azerbaijan, they said. Azerbaijan's gas exports from the massive BP-led Shah Deniz project fell after a technical issue in a subsea condensate pipeline last week led to the shutdown of Alpha, one of the 2 producing platforms at the field. The project supplies Turkey, Georgia, and Europe. Now, look, guys, I don't want to be too alarmist or too doomy here. Good luck with that. Maybe this is just a technical issue, as the article is saying. Technical issues happen all the time. I mean, this infrastructure is incredibly large and complex. It's a miracle of modern engineering, and things break. All right, so maybe this is just a thing breaking. But this is a thing breaking in a category, subsea pipelines, that has a bad habit of having freaking bombs planted on them and anchors dragged across them lately. So I have to wonder, this thing, when you see this affects Turkey, that's a NATO country. This affects Georgia. That's one of Russia's enemies. It supplies natural gas to Europe. That's a geopolitical hotbed. I saw an article about how this might even be impacting energy shipments to Israel through this pipeline. Is this another story of energy infrastructure being targeted in this war where everybody is like afraid to actually declare war? And so we're just going around like secretly breaking everybody's stuff instead of actually just like throwing down and getting it over with so we can all move on with our freaking lives? I don't know. But stop targeting energy infrastructure. It just messes with civilians. It doesn't accomplish freaking anything. End of rant. All right, last but not least, SpaceX Starship rocket breaks up after launch and flights were diverted after an FAA debris warning. Guys, if you look around on Twitter or probably on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of video of this spaceship burning up on reentry. It was a pretty crazy light show. That being said, sad story to see a rocket breaking up. Nobody was harmed. It was unmanned at the time. And again, the silver lining, they were able to catch that reusable rocket booster back at the launch pad. That's only the second time they've been able to do that. So silver lining to that story. Elon was out this morning saying preliminary indication is that we had an oxygen fuel leak in the cavity above the ship's engine firewall that was large enough to build pressure in excess of the vent capacity. That sounds eerily reminiscent of the leaking O-ring in the solid rocket booster that took out the Challenger back in the 1980s. Apart from obviously double checking for leaks, we will add fire suppression to that volume and probably increase vent area. Nothing so far suggests pushing next launch past next month. So looks like they have some idea at least what caused it, and they are moving forward with the next launch. So a setback. I hate to see that. I just want to say thank you so much to M&J for gifting not just these 10, but another 10 Nobody Special Finance memberships. M&J is single-handedly swelling the ranks of the Melonheads this morning. Thank you so much, M&J, for supporting the channel. Guys, if you received one of those membership, be sure and let M&J know you are grateful for that. Say thank you in the comments. Thanks so much, M&J, for supporting the channel. Everybody else, welcome to the Melonheads. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. Resistance is futile. Thanks again, M&J. And my man Mish has been a member for 11 months. Thank you so much, Mish, for supporting the channel. And he says, no show Monday. 'Tis a holiday. Thank you, sir, for that reminder. Guys, we do this show every day, provided markets are open. We do take the day off when there are holidays because there tends to be almost nothing to talk about on business holidays. And so we don't just fill the airs with fluff. Thank you so much, Mish, for the reminder. No show on Monday. And Break My Wallet Motorsport, I love that name. He says, too many luxuries in life. No time for kids. Guys, your luxuries will not be there with you on your deathbed. You're not going to be sitting in the hospital or sitting at your home or in hospice care being glad you bought that iPhone 35 years ago. You are going to be glad you spent time with your kids or with your family. Abso-freaking-lutely Break My Wallet Motorsport. Keep that in mind, guys. Stay grounded. Remember why we do this. Good message, sir. Thank you, sir, for that. And thank you for supporting the channel. Uncle Fedster says, happy Friday, Jack. I see charts showing Japan's population has been decreasing since 2010. A huge decrease in population. That is correct, Uncle Fedster. Japan is seeing the population decline, absolutely. And South Korea is actually the worst out of all of them. Maybe they're playing too many Squid Games over there. I don't know what's going on in South Korea. But look, it's a Northern Hemisphere problem. South Korea is the worst. China and Japan are pretty bad. Europe is pretty bad. And the United States is pretty bad. The fertility rate way down across the whole Northern Hemisphere. Now, the U.S. and Europe, we're not seeing the population collapse because you've got a lot of immigration into the U.S. and Europe that's making up for that decline in the birth rate. But the entire Northern Hemisphere is just not making babies. Now, guys, look, science has discovered what causes that. We know how to make babies now. We've had a lot of advances in this is a family show. Maybe I should stop. Everybody, bottle of Jack Daniels, a little Barry White, solve this problem in a hurry, all right? It's finance driven, guys. That's what it is. They're making life so expensive for people that we can't afford to have kids. Think about it. And anybody else who's out there like, I want to start a family, I want to have a kid. Why aren't you? It's almost because my job won't allow it, or I don't have enough money. I can't afford a kid, which, by the way, guys, you can never afford a kid. Just like beware anybody out there who thinks like, oh, I can afford a kid, or I'm ready to have a kid. Nothing can prepare you for that. Nothing can prepare you for the shock to your finances of having kids or the sensation of warm vomit rolling down your back. You just have to live it to experience it. That being said, there's nothing like it, guys. So enough of this silly, like, oh, I'm not having a family because I want to drive a nice car or I want to have a nice smartphone. Like, it's just horrible, horrible decisions. And for some reason, our media is full of this subtle messaging where, like, if you devote your life to children, you're somehow a slave to a patriarchy or a slave to some other thing, or you're giving up all these wonderful experiences. I'll never go backpacking through Europe because of this darn baby. Who cares? Oh my God, your trip through Europe is not going to look up at you and smile and light up the whole freaking world for you. Like, priorities, people. That's all. Anyways, wow, that That kind of went tangential in a hurry, didn't it, Uncle Fester? Anyways, thank you, Uncle Fester, for supporting the channel very much. And thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads this morning. You guys rock. Thank you guys for the super chats and for supporting the channel. Thank you also to my magnanimous Melonheads on Patreon and YouTube. Looking forward to talking to you guys for our weekly get-together on Zoom at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. Love you guys. Don't forget that like button and subscribe button on the way out. And everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.